Raptors' first pre-draft workout has been revealed, and it's an interesting piece as we have an elite defender at the guard position that's getting worked out and looked at by Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster. So we'll take a look at that, including some massive news for Toronto basketball as the city has acquired a WNBA team, and we have an update regarding Vince Carter's Hall of Fame induction. So lots of stuff to sink our teeth into and dive into in this video today. But before we do, folks, again, over 51% of our viewers are not subscribed, and things are about to heat up for the Toronto Raptors, so make sure you keep it locked to Raptors Digest so you don't miss a single thing regarding this team for the offseason. But let's dive into the first topic of discussion. The first thing we're taking a look at is the Raptors working out an elite defender. Now, there's going to be a lot of emphasis, a lot of eyes put on the Toronto Raptors ahead of this year's NBA draft, because depending on how the lottery goes, and that's just days away, and I'll be going live for that, as that's probably one of the biggest moments for this season for the Toronto Raptors, figuring out whether or not we keep our draft pick this season or it's going to go to next year. But basically, I'll be live for that in the next couple days. But depending on how that goes, the Toronto Raptors might have 3 draft picks in this year's NBA draft. So we're probably going to see Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster take a look at a lot of guys, because that first draft pick can be anywhere from 1 through 6, or obviously it's gone. We also have a draft pick at 19th from the Indiana Pacers, and we also have a draft pick at number 31, which is coming from the Detroit Pistons. So the Raptors are going to be looking at a ton of guys in a ton of different ranges, and frankly, I don't want to overlook anyone, because some of the Raptors' best draft selections have been in that late sort of round picks, second round picks, undrafted guys, which come into this Raptors team and have blossomed, under this Masai Ujiri regime, different coaches and stuff. Obviously, the development has, I don't want to say stagnated, but hasn't had as many hits as it did sort of in the mid-2010s. But I still trust, regardless of how people are feeling about Masai Ujiri, I still trust his draft eye and the types of people he's looking at. And the first pre-draft workout has basically been released, as the first confirmed workout for the Toronto Raptors during this draft cycle is Reese Beekman. Now, who the heck is this guy? Now, if you're like me, not watching too much college basketball, I'm highlighting all these types of players get linked to the Toronto Raptors as we get closer to draft time. But this is an interesting piece. Basically, Reese Beekman is 22 years old. He's 6'3", point guard, and played for Virginia, and really took a step up during his last season out there in college. You can see the jump in terms of points per game, assists, rebounds, solid free throw shooter, which is nice. A solid 3-point shooter as well. Nothing extravagant, nothing that makes your head turn and say, oh, this guy's going to be knocking down shots at a crazy rate in the NBA. But 31% is not something to, scoff at the college level. But really what Reese Beekman's able to do, what he's able to provide for your team, is this dude is an elite defender. All of the scouting reports, the defensive highlight tapes, all of those types of things indicate that this is a dude that could come in immediately in the NBA and just hound people on the defensive end. In this year's playoffs, we're seeing the importance of guys like Lou Dortz, Jaden McDaniels, not Jalen McDaniels, across the NBA. And there seems to be a little bit of a shift going towards, emphasis on the defensive end. If you guys aren't familiar or don't remember, made a video on it like a month ago, how Adam Silver's come out and basically said there's probably going to be some rule changes this offseason that will lead the Toronto Raptors, the NBA, to create some rules and some favorable whistles for the defense out there in the league, because they've gone away from that over the past decade. Hand checks out of the way, different defensive positioning rules, all that stuff has been called in favor of the offensive player, but now things might be taking a switch, moving back to a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more handsy basketball on the defensive end, give the defensive players more room to work with in order to stop, all the elite offensive guys we have in the NBA right now. So bringing in a guy that can be a hound defensively, heck, even the Eastern Conference guys like Alex Caruso, Drew Holiday, we're seeing what impact they can have on specific teams. Derek White on the Boston Celtics team as well is not something that I'm that opposed to, and he's also projected to be kind of like a second round pick. If things go badly for him, could go as an undrafted free agent. I wouldn't be shocked the Raptors are trying to fill up their roster with those types of guys. So, definitely a guy that I think the Raptors could be cool to take a swing on, looking at his potential. I'm sure we're going to be looking at a ton of prospects over the coming weeks, but I do want to say, before we move to the next topic, the Raptors desperately need to figure out more stuff at the forward position rather than the guard spot. It feels like every 10-day contract, every two-way guy we drafted in the second half of last season was a shooting guard, a point guard, one of these types of players. None of them really worked out, but the Raptors with IQ, with RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, those types of guys, that core, more guard-centric, ball-dominant-centric players, out there on this group. And then off the bench, we have Grady Dick, potentially Gary Trent Jr., potentially Bruce Brown coming back on this team. So really, the forward position is where the Raptors need to bolster that sort of lineup rather than going all in on the guards. But in the NBA draft, you just go for the best talent, the highest upside, and not really worry about it. But just wanted to get that point across. But the next thing we're taking a look at is some big news for Toronto basketball. Is Toronto's awarded a WNBA team. Now, this is a really interesting storyline. Firstly, because it's exciting. The WNBA is definitely a growing product. I know it always gets memed on, and this is probably spoken. Back when Riker was doing WNBA quotes or stats they used to bring up on every live stream a couple years ago. But basically, the WNBA, even the past couple seasons, has really gained some popularity. Obviously, the level of basketball has always been great, but now you want to have some star players to be able to root for. So more eyes are getting on the product, and frankly, I'm just someone that I don't really watch a sport if I don't have a team. Like, even NBA games, I always want to root for one side, root for another, but having the Toronto Raptors, I wouldn't care about the NBA nearly as much if I didn't really have a team I can sink my hook into and really follow and get excited about and, process the rest of the NBA through the contact lens of a Toronto Raptors team. But now that the WNBA has sort of a Toronto squad, I'm actually pretty excited, especially with, Caitlin Clark getting drafted now this year. Paige Becker's coming in super. There's some big names that are going to be the WNBA, and basically, Toronto's been awarded a WNBA expansion team. And here's what we know so far. Basically, coming from this article, the team will start in 2026. MLSC, and this is stuff that came out, I believe, earlier this year, not calendar year, but NBA season year, but MLSC was interested in potentially bringing in a WNBA expansion franchise. Larry Tannenbaum was the guy that really was pushing for that on the board of the Raptors ownership and stuff, but other members of MLSC weren't that interested. I think Tannenbaum has his own sort of business. I don't know the logistics behind our specific ownership side, but Tannenbaum branched off, got away from, Rogers, Bell, these execs, and said, hey, I'm not worried about that. I'm going to come in and try to buy my own WNBA team myself. And frankly, I think this is probably a perfect time to sort of get in on this league because it's at the ground floor, budding star. Same thing happened in the NBA kind of in the 70s, 80s, with these star players coming in, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan. Even though there were stars before, great talent before, it's those big names that transcend that sort of basketball community that really makes the league more valuable, more interesting to cover. So excited that a team is coming to Toronto. Excited for a team to sort of root for there. Probably get some coverage on Raptors Digest as well as we, are able to cover that, a year down the line. But cool stuff. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section down below. Next thing we're taking a look at is Vince Carter Hall of Fame details revealed. And Vince Carter, a controversial name amongst Raptors fans, but it seems like a lot of people have forgiven him after winning the NBA championship for leaving a sour taste, when he demanded a trade, left the Toronto Raptors the way he did. But obviously, he's one of the most influential players in Toronto basketball history, a guy that really kept this team from probably folding in his early years. So, without him, the Raptors might not exist. So, shout out to Vince on that front. I've held the same. I don't want Vince Carter's number retired, but everything else, I'm cool with Vince Carter being brought back in, being loved, being embraced by the Toronto community. But the jersey retirement, Kyle Lowry or DeMar DeRozan have to have their jerseys retired first. Probably Kyle Lowry, DeMar next there. Those are the two guys I think actually deserve their jerseys retired in Toronto. And then, if Vince after that, maybe, but I don't want Vince being the first jersey thrown up in the rafters because I think people have short memories in terms of how he left this team. But basically, have a little update in terms of Rockets legend Tracy McGrady will induct Vince Carter into the 2024 Basketball Hall of Fame. Obviously, both teammates for the Toronto Raptors when they were here. I'm surprised it's not Magic legend. Tracy McGrady is better with the Orlando Magic, but interesting stuff along those lines. But I know that always sparks up a little bit of discussion. But you guys are the best doing as far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. I'm signing out. Cheers.